I actually went back to season 5 Worlds and then just hunted down a bunch of Laneswap games and then watched them by myself because that's the kind of degenerate I am.
Understandable.
And here's the thing. So the shared XP was, I was refreshing my memory, was kind of overblown at that time with jungle and top. So
Mhm.
even if you were to do, I'm going to get technical, so you guys might want to skip ahead at this part of the show if you're not interested in very technical
Okay.
lane swap definitions. If you did a strong side invade, which means that you sent your top laner and jungler into the invade on the same side of the map as your duo lane in the lane swap, right? If you did a
Mhm.
strong side invade and you 3-camped with your jungler and top laner, the jungler would be level 3, the top laner would still be level 1, right?
Mhm.
But because you're doing the jungle follow and the top lane helps the jungler kill the camps faster, you would actually be able to second wave crash. So basically at 220, what was happening in 2015 Worlds was that if you did a strong side invade, you would actually second wave crash in that scenario. You
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily third wave crash. Um, and so teams were taking that particular approach into knocking down the turret. But I do think your question's an interesting one because here are the factors. I'm going to go into all the factors we have to consider about how lane swaps have changed. So bear with me, guys.
Yeah, you guys can
Um,
skip ahead, but yeah, go ahead. Like,
so
because
I
I'm
don't know.
just a very big
No, no,
fan of
no.
like lane swaps in general, so I
Yeah.
just want to
Look,
know.
I think it's a great question, and to answer your
Mhm.
question, I don't know because I haven't been experimenting with this, and we haven't seen enough of it. Like G2 might know the answer to your question.
Yeah.
Nobody might know the answer to your question. But the thing that has changed pretty significantly is that obviously we have the plates, right, which are
Mhm.
going to be an additional form of gold. So I believe what you're talking about is if you have the demolish proc, basically if you second wave crash, you're going to be able to get one demolish proc to take down plates faster, then it's going to reset the wave, then you could get another demolish proc. That's what you're implying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So in that case, like I don't know the answer to that question because I haven't experimented with it myself or seen how that works in scrims. My instinct is to say probably it's better to second wave crash, but that's just pure conjecture.
Mhm.
Um, as opposed to the third wave crashing, and especially because you can still do the jungle top lane follow. If you did do a strong side invade, you could also then have your jungler and top laner there on the second wave crash to get the additional damage down. And
Mhm.
then reset the wave, or dive, if their top laner is dumb enough to be there. Or at least you
Mhm.
can zone the top laner and support potentially from walking up to the turret on the second wave. If they are going to try and like match with the support. So there's a lot of different like nuances to this. But there were other factors that changed as well. So basically, in the 6-month period after the World Championship in 2015, there were some pretty significant changes. One of those changes was a minion wave change, which I think has kind of flown under the radar, which is basically at the end of 2015, after Worlds, what Riot did was they changed the way that minion waves interact with each other because they added a new mechanic that if your team's level is on average higher than the enemy team's level, your minion
Mhm.
wave pushes more, right? And it
Mhm.
pushes harder and harder the larger level differences there is. And so what this means is that typically in 2015 Worlds, a lot of it was about denying top laners. And so what you could do is you could get a level advantage on your top laner, take down a turret, and then freeze at your own tier 1 in the long lane, where you had
Yeah.
destroyed the turret, and the minion wave would still be pushing into you. It is not really possible to do that any longer because if you have a level difference, your wave will automatically push out. And you have to consider cross mapping for plates at the same time. So the question becomes, is freezing as the team with an advantage even worth it when the minion wave's going to push out? And you could maybe accomplish something cross map with getting additional plate gold. That is a consideration that didn't exist. And I don't know the answer to that question either. Like, I'm pretty sure nobody has figured out in this iteration of the game with all of the changes that have happened over the years, the optimal way to do this. The second thing that changed was halfway through 2016, they implemented a patch where they changed the turret fortification. So the old system of fortification was all 3 tier 1 turrets had 35% damage reduction until 7 minutes. Then Riot changed it, so only mid and top turret had fortification. It was only until 5 minutes, and it was 50%, right? Now, G2 has been clever about the way they deal with this, particularly through Demolish on the support to kind of void that. We've also seen different iterations of, I'm not going to call them lane swaps, but like kind of like quick push out and tempo movements. So, for example, what Gen G did against T1 in the finals of LCK, where it wasn't a lane swap, but they kind of quickly shifted their bot lane into the top side. And you kind of avoid, if you can do the normal lane until 3-4 minutes, then you could switch up and then get the advantages without the fortification in the top side, and kind of take those macro matchups. And we've seen other teams do this too, like Team Liquid was doing this pretty early on in the LCS split. So I think a lot of the game is maybe not going to be true lane swaps, but like lane reassignments based off of tempo and pushing. But I do think it's super interesting to theorize about right now. And like, there are reasons why, teams are experimenting in this way. And, I'm not going to, like, I've said this before on different shows, but I'm not going to say what Dylan Falco told me, but I did ask him very specifically about game 1 of the finals of LEC with Fnatic and why they didn't freeze against Oscarden instead of like letting him get a deep freeze at tier 2 and kind of get back into the game in terms of levels. And his answer was basically like, it was much, I'm not going to, it's G2's shit. Yeah. I'm not going to leak it. But basically what he said about that particular game was, in practice, we didn't take turrets that quickly. In top lane.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So like, I think like they themselves are still working through this, but like basically they took top lane turret in spite of that fortification so fast in that game, because the old meta would have been to like bounce the wave off as the turret's getting destroyed and then refreeze at your tier 1. But I think because of minion wave changes, plate gold changes, and then also them still having relatively limited practice with this, they may not have known exactly the right thing to do, because it did allow Oscarden to get back into the game on Zach, which was kind of unfortunate for them and made it a lot closer than it would have otherwise been. But yeah, I think there are really interesting parts of this. And I think to your point about the wave 2 crash, that is something that was happening in 2015. And I confirmed that because I recently went back and just watched VODs of that. So
yeah,
the most efficient way to do it, especially if you can get jungle and top lane and demolish procs damage down on that turret, I think that's probably the fastest way you could possibly take it. So I'm generally in agreement to you. That was a very long way to answer that question.
Yeah, that was extremely long. I hope people didn't fall asleep.
I've been thinking about this a lot. So
yeah, me too. Like I lie in bed and I'm like thinking about different ways you could actually lane swap and how fast could you actually take the turret. But also one thing that has to also be mentioned is that this only works if the enemy team accepts the lane swap, right?
Yes.
Because if you do it on the second wave, then your jungle and top lane won't be there in time to actually dive them, right? So this was just something interesting.
No, they will be. They will be. They will be there. They will be there to dive them. That's the crazy thing, is because if you do a strong side invade, if their top laner is under that turret on the second wave, the jungle will be level 3, the top lane will be level 1. They will be there in time. You can crash it at 2 minutes 20. That's what happened in season 5, is like, because the jungle follow onto the 3 camp, or the top lane follow onto the 3 camps helps you take the camps so fast, the jungler can actually take them, I think, by 220 and be there for the dive. I think it's possible. So
okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
That was just something on my mind. But yeah, we can continue to other stuff now.
But yeah, I think like a lot of people hate lane swaps, but I think also a lot of people don't really understand the beauty in viewing them, or at least that's what I would like to believe. And that should be like, I think a greater appreciation of lane swaps. And I'll probably make content about this as MSI goes on, because we're almost certainly going to see some. But I am desperately hoping that Riot doesn't remove this from the game. I don't think it's going to become super pervasive. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope it becomes a viable niche strategy that we continue to see.
Yeah, I mean, in some certain games, right, to dodge some certain matchups, it's interesting. But I think lane swap is always going to be a thing that the more you understand, the more nice it is to watch it. But who's actually going to take, if you're a normal fan, you're watching the games, like, who's going to take the time to understand the lane swap? Like, who would, like, you're working on 9 to 5, you're already busy with work, you just want to relax and watch some fun League of Legends, watch Elkanon, like, stomp enemy bot lane, whatever. And then you just have to watch some lane swap and try to understand, like, oh, they actually mistimed their tempo there, and now they actually get the first move on bot lane and get to hit the turret like 2 more times. Like, no one gives a shit about it. And that's the thing, like, people just want to see action on their screen. But if you do actually understand lane swaps, I think it is a beautiful thing. One thing that really triggered me, this is an MSI show, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But in the EMEA Masters, there's also been a lot of academy teams, you know, getting into the lane swaps, they're doing it, and they're just doing it like horribly. Like they will mess up the timing of the base, and it's so obvious that they will just go bot side, and enemy bot lane is like, oh, they based, I guess we'll go top to match them. But it's like, bro, it's like playing chess. It's like a 50-50. You should understand what their like thoughts are behind it. Like obviously they want to go bot, so you should be going bot to match them. Like they make so many mistakes, but it's not being punished because people don't actually understand lane swaps at that level, or even think about what their opponent's intentions are. And yeah, so when I do watch like a really nice lane swap, I do get kind of like excited about it.
I also think people are just taking the worst case scenario and acting like the lane swap works every fucking time. Like these Asian teams aren't just going to sit twiddling their fingers. And remember how many best of fives is going to be. Like if they actually guess correctly, it just won't be a lane swap anymore, and they'll still have their like power bot lane. And by the way, God forbid you've done a G2 and you actually had like a shittier lane that had to scale, because now Jackie Lover may in your ass 2-1-2 and it didn't work whatsoever. Like it's people forget it's a gamble. It doesn't work every single time.
Yeah, and also because people have been bad about level 1 warding patterns. You know, there were ways where... So the thing about getting deep wards in is that basically if you, as a typical rule, if you are the team with the stronger 2v2 that somebody's trying to dodge, you probably also have the stronger level 1, which means that you can invade, right? And it means you can get those deep wards in.
By the way, someone should just go on your channel and watch your video explaining the lane swap that BDS did. Because one thing you explained that the modern pros miss is that fucking ward right outside their turret at the edge of the base. That's the one where you know if they're going the bot. If you do a normal one inside the jungle, they might never walk past that. That's the one that if teams just do those ones, you can also way better have a chance of guessing where they're going, right?
Yeah, and on Power Spike too, Dab and I did a breakdown with a map. So I show like where the warding locations are and like the way that it used to be done, which is like you get the deep wards in immediately, and then you kind of just park everybody in mid lane, and then you wait to see where they go, and then you just split from mid lane into the lanes you want. Basically, once you get the information. The thing is that teams have been very bad about gathering the information that they need at level 1. And I think it's just, again, it's been a while since people have done this, and they don't want to necessarily commit to some of these like deep warding patterns or like figure out the level 1s that give them the info. But I think that will probably change for MSI. We'll start to see some of that.
I want to put your... Okay, I want to disagree with that, because I don't know if you watched the Top Esports versus BLG in Game 5 where they actually did the lane swap. And they actually tried to do what you said, like they tried to stand around mid. They didn't really stand around mid, they were more around bot side jungle. But once they saw them top side, they actually ended up running all the way top. But what happened was that they actually lost the 3 minions. So they actually lost wave control of both sides, because they had TF into Casante, and then I think it was Kalista Rakan. I'm not 100% sure what the matchup exactly was. But what they did was they ran all the way top to look to match them. And what ended up happening is that they lost lane control of both sides, like both on the top lane and both on the on bot lane. So what the Top Esports just did was they just pushed out the wave and reset it, and then BLG were just behind in tempo the entire game. And it can work, but I think a better solution is actually having someone to scout the lane in the first place. Because what G2 did versus BDS was also that they just sent Jinx to the tier 1, right?
Yep.
So you can do that late invade, and you can like invade and put down the wards. I don't want to go into the wards as well, because I think a lot of people are missing out on where to actually put the wards. You're supposed to put the wards like on every entrance to understand if they're actually entering on top side.
Yeah, you need 3 wards on one side of the map.
Yeah, one for top lane, and then one in the entrance for mid lane, and then one like in the entrance of the bot side jungle.
By the gate,
side jungle.
by the base gate in the middle,
But one thing that is missing is like actually having someone to scout the lane to see if they ran into lane instantly and are hiding there.
That's true.
And that's what was missing in the like BDS versus G2. And I think that's the only thing that's missing to actually cancel out the entire lane swap, is having someone to scout the lane to understand like if someone is there, and then you can properly match. But if you do like you said, where you stand around mid, you're gonna end up like losing control on both sides. Like they're just gonna get wave control on both sides, and then they can choose when to swap again. And you're constantly going to be in this like chasing state where you're looking to like, oh, we need to match them again, but oh shit, we're losing minions and you're
That was-
losing like resources.
That was actually one of my arguments for why I think BDS knew about the lane swap via scrim leaks, because if they had done that level 1 and 5 stacked and then they had swapped back into bot lane, they would have been super late and lost control of the wave and been behind in levels. So yeah, I agree with that for sure. There's definitely like it's a new meta, so like I'm not going to say I can talk about what used to happen, but again, the teams are going to have experimented with this much more thoroughly, especially G2 at this point in time. So the real experts are the teams, because they have all the data from their own experimentation and scrims. So basically what I'm going to have to do is, I'll be piecing that together and making theories and asking questions based on what we see at MSI. But what's so exciting is this is definitely like a very evolving meta, which is fun because we get to compare it to what happened before, but also there are many changes in the game that have happened since then. And like there are also certain questions that I have, such as like, if you have such a strong lane, like a double hail of blades, like you're playing like what, Ashe Varus or something like that, even if you do fall 3 minions behind, is that enough to stop the 2v2 from being dominant? I don't really know the answer to that question, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe it is better to be slightly behind in lane and just like run all the way across the map because you can still win. Maybe that's true. I don't know. So this is what's so fun about it. And like, it really does tilt me that people are already complaining about this, because I think this is such a deep strategic well that we're drawing from right now. And it's so fun to be able to think about how this is going to affect MSI, because this could be the difference between winning and losing MSI is like somebody's mastery over this, which is fucking awesome.
No, I think so too. I think it's going to be super fun to watch. I'm not sure how much Laneswap is going to be. I mean, Camille
There will be some for sure. There will definitely be some.
yeah, I hope so too, honestly. I think it will be really interesting to see how the teams adapt around it. But I'm pretty sure all the teams, if they're, have an IQ above 50, as I like to say, is that they've actually done some research and they know how to actually answer a lane swap, etc. Yeah.
So yeah, super cool. And like it is fun to see this coming out of Europe too, especially because historically Europe was the region who actually solved kind of like the lane swapping first, when there was, all the regions had different styles of lane swapping. By the time we kind of came into the international setting, it was the European lane swap style that ended up dominating. Like Korea and China and those regions kind of bent the knee to the European lane swap style, which was fun to watch. And,
also, Monty, you have to know that, like, if someone's a hater, it can't last forever because Riot Games exists. So Monty will have to really savor the lane swaps at MSI, because if they go too successful, Riot will just find a way to nerf it, guys. They did it before, and they'll do it again for sure. So it's not like it's going to be here for 5 years or something. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, guys. As pointed out, maybe it's the one chance G2 has to actually do some miracle run to the final or something. Who knows?
I agree. Right? That's the Riot conundrum. Yeah. That's the Riot conundrum, Thorin. They both want the upset. So the only way G2 can win MSI is if they become lane swap gods. So if they win, will they nerf it, or will they...
I mean, most likely, yeah, they will nerf it. But not because they will just win, but also because the viewers don't understand it, and they want more viewers. They want more clicks.
But Memento. But what if all the Western fans are happy because G2 does really well at MSI? Or do they become suddenly lane swap fans?
Possibly, but I think people will still hate it because they don't understand it. But yeah.
I mean, all I'm going to say, Monty, is if we take him at face value, logically, even Doublelift doesn't know what a lane swap is. So if he's like a fucking, 10+ year veteran, won the LCS, like 8 times or something, bro, if he can't understand it, then how could we expect Johnny Nobody at home and Joe Blogs to understand it? It's just, I mean, by the way, check the comments of all those videos. None of the fucking fans understand it, mate. They all think a Scion invades a lane swap, so fucking hell. Who knows, right? Who knows? Do you have a point where you're going to finish something there, or do you have something extra to say?
No, I just wanted to say, like, I think it's very good that the EU are trying something different, because we obviously cannot match the Korean Asian teams.
Yes.
Like in a 2v2, 1v1.
Yes.
I think it's just refreshing to see us actually try something different, because I'm so sick and tired of just seeing us like copy the LPL, copy the LCK. Oh, they played Arena Soul. Okay, we can play Arena Soul. Like, it's just do something yourself, have some creativity, and try to find a way to actually beat them, because maybe that's also why we mastered the Laneswaps back then as well, because we realized that we can't match the Koreans, we can't match the LPL. But just creativity overall is something that I really miss, and that's why I'm a big fan of G2. Even if the Laneswaps are terrible, you know, at least they're trying to do something innovative. And that's what I appreciate about them. And that's also one of my reasons why I think G2 will be kind of like this dark horse of the tournament. They might actually go to finals. I might be delusional as an EU fan, but I think G2 has a pretty good chance if, you know, the cards are played right.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.